Hey, besties and bosses, happy Friday. How's everyone's week going? So today I want to hop on and talk about passive income. I think this is something that a lot of us in the online world, we think about, we talk about, we hear a lot about, and I particularly want to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions I think might be floating around out there, and maybe an unpopular opinion I have just on the term passive income and maybe a way to reframe that. Before we do, I'll tell you where this came from. I have a new interview live over on the blog this week with Alex Honeysett, who is a PR and marketing expert and the founder of Human at the Helm. And I say this every time I have an interview. I'm always so excited to share them, but I'm just so grateful for everyone who has shown up on these interviews and shared their wisdom and their knowledge and their tips and their zone of genius and a look behind the scenes. And this one I'm particularly excited about. I've known Alex since we were in coach training together, and she's just, I just love her so much, and we see eye to eye on quite a few things with business, with life, with the entrepreneurial world, and I think she just has some really great insights to share, and she's giving us a really wonderful look behind the scenes of her business and just some of the realities of being an entrepreneur. So I think there's a lot of value in that. I put a link below here, and you can definitely check that out. Alex is also in this group, and she has very generously offered to answer any questions y'all might have. So if you listen to the interview, if you have a question for her, you can pop it below here. I would tag her so that she sees it. Hey, hello. I'm just introducing my interview from this week. How are you? So while Alex and I were talking, so many different topics came up, a lot that I think really interesting, but I didn't want to just regurgitate what we already have over there. And I was thinking about what to share today. And one of the things that came up was Alex shared how she got kind of sucked into the online business world and created a course, and her results were less than what she had hoped for. And I think there's a lot of that goes on, and made me want to talk about the idea of passive income. So before we dive into that, I want to say that I don't want anyone to hear this wrong. I'm not at all going to discount the idea of having multiple revenue streams, or I don't want to discount the idea of leveraging our time and growing our business. That's not what this is about. But I do want to talk a little bit about the term passive income, and I think some of the stories that are floating around online that can cause us to have some expectations that can really let us down. So let's start with the term passive income. This makes me a little crazy. So the term passive, I looked this up. The word passive means accepting or allowing what happens or what others do without active response or resistance. So the synonyms include submissive and unresisting and unassertive and compliant, obedient, docile, malleable, pliable. And so this term alone, when I think of this with income, I think it makes us all think that we can create something and then just sit back and do absolutely nothing, and money is just going to rain on us from the sky. And I talk a lot about mindset. I do think mindset is important for everything we do. I think it's one of the foundational pieces, and I know money mindset is a big piece, but I think with that we sometimes get taught or believe that if we just believe in ourselves enough, if we just have a strong enough mindset and think that we deserve to have something, and if we believe in a certain number and focus on it enough, that if we put it out into the world, we can passively sit back and it's going to just come to us. And I think this sets a lot of us up for a lot of frustration, because I think the truth with passive income, I think a lot of passive income still requires a lot of maintenance and showing up. And there's, I think, usually not a whole lot of anything passive about passive income. I think the irony around passive income is that I think a lot of us can actually burn ourselves out while trying to create passive income. So what do I mean by this? So for passive income to happen, most of the time, what we're seeing when people are talking about 6 and 7 figure launches with just one webinar that they put out, there's first and foremost a lot of work on the front end that is happening. There's work on the foundation of their business of just being very clear on who they're speaking to, who they are, what their business is, creating their product, usually testing their product. I'm a big believer in testing. Creating an audience, marketing to that audience, building and nurturing those relationships, creating that trust with their audience. So there's all of that on the front end before a launch for this so-called passive revenue that happens. So when we hear that someone just uses one webinar to create a 6 or 7 figure launch, usually that's one webinar plus a whole lot of nurturing that's been done. It's usually not someone who's just come out of the gates, has put out one blog post to their list in a year, and I don't know, has a list of 3 people, which is beautiful. That's 3 people you're talking to. But usually if they're creating that 6 or 7 figure launch, there's a whole lot on the front end that's been doing. And usually these are people who, even if it's happening relatively quickly, there's a lot that's being doing up front. They're not often talking about the ad spend, for example, that they might be spending to get in front of some of these people. So I think there's quite a lot of falsities and scare tactics and marketing that are floating out in the online world to market to all of us, so that we will buy into this because it hits on our pain point and it hits on our pleasure points for what we want, and it's very smart marketing, but it doesn't always paint a true picture. The other thing that happens when we're hearing someone say they have a 6 or 7 figure launch, it's so much getting wrapped into numbers, which isn't what it's about, but they're talking about their net income. They're not talking about the actual take-home income that is coming after that ad spend, that's coming after they're paying their team, that's coming after all of the different pieces. So I think that's something else to think about. Let's get back to the actual term passive. So often with passive income, there's a lot of work on the other side of it as well. There's maintenance. There is following up with people. There's usually continual marketing that goes on. There's usual continual content marketing or delivering value and continuing to nurture those relationships and those people, often within the actual product or program, whether it needs to be delivered or followed up on. There's a whole lot of work on the other side, and there's absolutely nothing passive about that. So I think the term residual income is actually a much better way to think about this and to wrap our minds around this, because I do think creating revenue streams and having multiple revenue streams and creating ways that we can leverage our time and grow our businesses and increase our reach and reach more people is brilliant and beautiful and something we can all think about. But I think it's the way in which we think about it that gets us tripped up. So residual income, when we think about it this way, I looked up the word residual. I'm big on words and what they mean. So residual means, I'm going to read this, means remaining after the greater part or quantity has gone. A quantity remaining after other things have been subtracted or allowed for. And I think this is a much more, not realistic, but just a nicer way to paint what we can expect when we are creating something that's going to generate this income while we sleep. So residual means what's left afterwards. So it's that income that can come, let's say we do create a course and we put in the effort to market it and we create that audience and we put it out there. Now we've done the work. We can continue to get residual income after the fact for that work we've already done. And I think that paints a much more lovely picture around it. So I think about this when I was acting, for example. If I did a commercial and I got residual income, I would get checks in the mail after my commercial work, and I would continue to get those checks, and those checks were income that I earned after the work was already done. But that is a much more realistic painting of a picture, because I still had to do a whole lot up front to create that residual income. There's nothing passive about it. So that's my beef with the word passive. So I think when we think about it this way, we can change our expectations and we can change what is going into it, because I think when we set ourselves up the other way, we set ourselves up for a lot of disappointment sometimes when it doesn't happen exactly the way we think or the way the online world is portraying how this passive income is going to happen. And all of a sudden when we're pulling long nights and hours for our launch, there's something passive about them. We think we're doing something wrong. We think we're the only ones that we're not following the rules right, or we're not as good as someone else. Or when the numbers come back, instead of celebrating the sales we have made or the people we have reached or the people who, if it's a course, for example, the people who have bought our course, instead of celebrating those numbers, we are disappointed and frustrated because those numbers aren't anywhere near what we expected in our mind. And then we think there's something wrong with our mindset or there's something wrong with our marketing, when often it's it's because there is nothing passive about it. It's something that takes continual effort and continual putting out there and continual growth. And the next time those numbers change and go up, and the next time and next time, until there's that compound effect. So is this all making sense to everyone? Is this all resonating? I know I've got 1 or 2 people live here. I'd love to know if this is resonating with you and if this is helpful to talk around. So that's what I really wanted to jump in and dive in around today, and just paint a little more of a real picture around what residual income is versus passive income, and just the realities of creating some of these launches I think we're hearing about online, or that we're seeing in some of the ad space right now. I'm thinking of 1 or 2 that are very popular, and I think it's important for all of us to know this and to have a conversation around it, because again, I'm going to say this one last time. Yes, absolutely. Create those courses, create those residual revenue streams, create those multiple revenue streams. But know that there is showing up and effort that comes on the front end and on the back end. And I think having a very real look at where those numbers people are sharing are coming from and what's behind those numbers. Most of those people, by the way, have teams. And if there was anything passive about their work, they wouldn't need a team to support them. So I think that's just another indication that it really is more residual income, and it's more leveraging time and leveraging an audience than it is passive. So that's what I've got for you today. Let me know if that resonates with you, and definitely check out Alex's interview. And if you have a question for her, pop that below. I am wishing you all your version of success and so much love and happiness this weekend, and I will be back next week. I know some people had some questions around content, so I'm putting together some thoughts around that I can share with all of you. Lots of love.